on this computer.
Oh, I got to push OK, or it doesn't work. There we go.
Okay, that's wonderful. So thank you very much, Heather McPherson, Edmonton Strathcona. Thank you very much for coming to talk to me for a few minutes from the lobby of Parliament.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Heather, you're just back from a week tour to the West Bank, almost immediately right back. The House is now in session. You were there for 5 days with a number of MPs, no, 2 other NDP MPs and 2 Liberals, as I understand it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Heather, I know that you've been very active on the Israel-Palestine issue for some time. You're probably the MP who has been the most vocal on this, but why did you decide to go?
You know, I think you can hear about what's happening on the ground many, many times. It's not the same as actually being on the ground, being able to bear witness, being able to be on the ground and see what's happening. I wanted to be able to take that experience and let it add to the calls that we've been making for things like a ceasefire, humanitarian access, justice for Palestinian people. And so I think being there, being able to see what was happening, being able to bear witness, and actually having that legitimacy of being able to share our experiences was very, very important. So when the opportunity to visit came up, I certainly was honored that I was able to do that. And I will say there is responsibility that comes with that. I feel obligated to find ways to tell the story of those people who perhaps don't have the same platform or the same ability as I have.
Well, was this your first time there, or had you been to the region before?
I had been to East Jerusalem before when I was young. I had never been to the West Bank, had never been to Jordan. We, of course, landed in Jordan, traveled into East Jerusalem, and then from there to Ramallah, to Jenin. So some of it I'd been, and some of it I hadn't. And I will say that even just my memories as a child of visiting the old city in Jerusalem, it's a very different place now.
Of course. It's not easy to get around the West Bank. How did you travel around?
We did have vehicles that transported us. Yeah, and you're right. It is very difficult. There are different license plates if you are Israeli or if you are Palestinian. There are different roads that you are expected to use. There are checkpoints that are very, very random, and getting through them can take 5 minutes or it can take 5 hours. Or you cannot get through. There's not really any rhyme or reason to how that all happens. So traveling is very difficult. Of course, the threat of violence is always there. It's always present. We were told by the Canadian representative, the mission in East Jerusalem. We were told by the mission in Jordan about how dangerous traveling was and how cautious we had to be. I know our teams were constantly talking to other teams within the area to find out where checkpoints were, what the situation on the ground was like. It was a nonstop dialogue that was going on. But as a Canadian who feels safe going almost anywhere in my country, it's hard to describe what it feels like when it's a constant fear. There's constant fear. There's constant worry about violence against yourself.
Was your fear principally of Palestinians attacking you? What's the fear? Where's the source of violence from what you?
No, I mean from my perspective, the fear predominantly came from the risk from the IDF, from the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, saying that, I don't want to undermine. I don't want to misrepresent the safety that comes with being a white female Canadian member of Parliament. All of those things come together to give me a level of safety that other individuals don't have. Right. And then there's also the threat of violence that is not directed at you, but you get caught up in. This is a region that violence is pervasive. That sure. Every day, innocent civilians, children are living with horrific violence. So yeah, I mean, even just the being caught in the wrong place at the wrong time was a real worry for us.
Sure. Did you experience going through any checkpoints, and do you sail through them as a diplomat, or do you have to stop? What's What's your
Oh no, it took
experience?
us hours to get through. Yeah, it took us a long time to get through some of them. Going even into the border from Jordan, we were held for several hours. And those with names that sounded Pakistani were kept behind, and others were allowed through without any trouble. In fact, one of my colleagues was kept behind, and I refused to go through without her. I stayed behind with her, and the border guards tried to make me go forward, and I just said no. I'm sorry, I won't be going without my colleagues. And
Mm,
so even the different treatment of different groups of our delegation was
wow.
interesting.
What was surprises for you? As I say, I know that you talked a lot, read a lot, know a lot, met a lot of Palestinian Canadians. Were there any surprises?
There were, I mean, listen, I did international development and humanitarian work for my entire career prior to being elected in 2019. So I've been on the ground. I've seen some really difficult situations. I've seen poverty. I've seen conflict. I've seen some of these things. For me, what was so shocking about this particular, going into Jenin camp, seeing the roads that are being torn up nightly by members of the IDF, the water tanks that are being shot at so that they can't store fresh water, water pipes being torn up, and so that the clean water and the sewage is mixing. It felt so systematic.
Mm,
It felt so structural. We met with some Israelis. We met with Israelis who are part of the Breaking the Silence organization. So two gentlemen that were previously part of the Israeli Defense Force, and they talked about how homes would be randomly targeted. The IDF would find homes where they knew people were innocent, that they weren't involved in any crimes, and they would terrorize that family by breaking down the door, by holding them at gunpoint, by not letting the children and the parents comfort each other.
right.
Just some of that sort of structural thing, I think, is really difficult. And for me, another piece, there's so much pain on both sides. There's so much distrust. The situation has been allowed to build, obviously for 75 years. And there's, I spoke to this small child in Jenin who lives in a war zone, who lives in a zone where the hospital that he's expected to go to has bullet holes in it. The school where he is expected to go has bullet holes in it. Like, this is a small child. And he said to me, "Do you love Palestinians?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I love Palestinians." And then he said, "Do you hate Israelis?" And I thought, no, I don't. Like, the idea that of building a peace going forward has, it just seems so important, so pressing, and so difficult as well.
Mm. My understanding is you did not get to Gaza. Is that right?
No, and I don't think that I would have wanted to, knowing just how stretched organizations are right now in
Yeah.
Gaza, knowing, to be honest, I'm not sure I could cross a border and then cross back, knowing how many people
Yeah.
are trying to get to safety, and
Sure.
how easy I certainly wouldn't want to take any of the humanitarian aid away from the people
Right.
it's going to
Okay.
right now.
Okay. In Jordan, you visited a Palestinian refugee camp. Is that, or maybe more than one? I don't know. Is that right?
We did. We visited more than one. We spoke to Palestinian refugees. We spoke to Palestinian refugees who were born in Jordan. So just to be clear, unless the people came from Palestine in 48, people who came after that didn't get citizenship. So generations now of people have been born in Jordan and are in effect stateless. They can't go back to Palestine, and they have no state, which means they have no opportunity for jobs, for to own land, to have hope for a better future.
Yeah. Just before I let you go, I know that you've been very active in terms of the Ukraine situation. I can't help but notice that Canada's response to helping Ukraine has been quite different than it has been for the people of Gaza. Do you have any comments on that?
I wish it wasn't the case. I mean, I, like you, like all of the world, sees the way that Canada, the US, other countries are treating this conflict so differently than what we see in Ukraine. I think what Canadians expect from our government, what we expect from leaders, is that we apply international humanitarian law, we apply the standards of human rights law equally. You know, if we respect the ICJ in one situation, we must respect it in the other. And I have to say too that the refusal of our government to hold Netanyahu responsible for his dangerous rhetoric, for the words that him and his senior ministers are using, allows that the Netanyahu government to go further and further right, which is so dangerous. It puts people in danger. It puts Israelis in danger. It puts Jewish people around the world in danger. It's such a mistake. I'm urging our Canadian government to apply human rights standards equally. It's so important because the rest of the world is watching. The rest of the world recognizes that Canada, our reputation is deeply, deeply damaged when we pick and choose whose human rights are more important.
Heather McPherson, MP for Edmonton Strathcona, thank you very much for going. Thank you very much for bearing witness and bringing back to us your perceptions. So get back to your work in the House of Commons there.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Have a great day.